Per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. It is Macro Monday. Let's take a look at some macro charts. Really not much going on other than this back and forth with the tariff stuff and markets. We all know what happened Friday with the margin cascade that I wrote up for Canary here. I think the takeaway, no matter what happened or has perceived to have happened, is you can't have all your assets on DeFi or any one exchange or in cross margin positions. I mean, you can't have your entire net worth in cross margin. You just can't, because a lot of this stuff liquidated people completely, and now we're almost back to levels we saw on the way down. BTC almost back to 116. So you don't want to be that person. You know, you're losing everything and then markets are just rebounding. ETFs on the week brought in 3 billion globally. We'll see what numbers look like tonight, which would be the data from Friday. If there was some overhang between Friday and today with ETF numbers based on the rebound in prices, I wouldn't expect huge outflows today, but we'll see. Could be wrong. We just need to continue to see flows. We don't need 3 billion a week. I'll take a billion a week forever. How about that? Is that so much to ask for? Looking at the basis for BTC and ETH, this is essentially the funding rate of CME stuff. BTC is quite low here at 8%, sub 8% on the futures side. ETH also sub 8% on the futures side. Not seeing too much change in OI on the CME side. So I don't know, you know, for BTC and ETH, it's kind of just like another day. But for altcoins, it is apocalypse, you know? Looking at IBIT, which I think closed higher than 65 or will close higher than 65, it's just at a very awkward spot. As a cloud trader, I want this to find support at the key June, which would make total sense. Obviously, we had a crazy event on Friday. It's going to take some time to reclaim levels. It's going to take some time to reconsolidate. Holding above the cloud is a big, big win. We don't want to see continued weakness. So clearly somebody is seeing prices down here and they're buying. So that's very helpful. We still have inverted head and shoulders, cup and handle, all sorts of stuff that hasn't really quite taken off yet. And as we look at metals, which I will in a second, you know, that's what we want for crypto. What's that meme? You know, Lord, I've seen what you've done for other people. I want that for me, right? Like that's my expectation for crypto here. Whether or not we get it, I don't know, but to be positioned for it makes some bit of sense to me. We just are unlikely to move at the same time. Metals are literally making massive moves every day, and the rare earth and the commodities in general, all this stuff is just competing for dollars away from crypto. So we kind of just have to wait and hope that it doesn't take too long to get this party started, but it looks okay here. It could look a lot worse, and alts certainly do look a lot worse. ETH as well, held above the cloud. Doesn't look terrible. I don't know what an entry looks like here for me. I think 36, 37. I just like to wait for the highs at this point. I'm not going to call this a head and shoulders, but if this does break down, which I don't think it will, then I'm going to say, yeah, you know what? There was a head and shoulders there. You know, it kind of looks like this one. It's kind of like this weird, gross mess that you could portray as a diagonal neckline here. Ultimately, it's the cloud. The cloud's going to determine how bearish this gets, because if we close in the cloud for BTC or ETH, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty. So we're running out of time to make up our mind. We could just go flat and sideways. I'm for it. That's fine. But the moment we start breaking down, I get very bearish very quickly. MSTR bounced more today than BTC did. Still not in a place that I care about it. It's still below the cloud. To me, this needs to make up a ton of ground on the MNAV or percentage move relative to BTC, however you want to think about that, to care about it. So it doesn't make sense to me to jump into this here. It still doesn't. And we're going to look at this probably almost every video and every day, because I'm not going to miss the next trade. I don't care if it's right or wrong, but I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there just like I was back here, because when the market knows that instruments like this have a history of moving the way they do, I mean, just look at the AI stuff, look at the quantum stuff. People are always eager and ready to throw all their money at this stuff. BMNR is another one on the ETH side. I don't think there's a trade quite yet for me here, but again, I like highs, I like momentum, I like anything above 62.5. I think it makes sense. This could be a decent ascending triangle on lower time frames. Still has a little bit of time to play out, probably happens closer to November if this does break up. Could certainly look worse. It doesn't look too bad as it's consolidating there. If we talk about the miners for a second, again, on the legacy side, CORZ to me easily looks like the best pre-breakout. Whether or not this goes anywhere, I don't know. What fundamental news CORZ would need relative to CoreWeave and the merger or the non-merger, I couldn't even tell you where to think about that. I just don't know. What I do know is the technicals on this look great. This has gone nowhere for a long time because it outperformed everything in 2024. So now that all the other miners are moving around this, it does make some bit of sense that, again, back to this idea of the market knows the history of price action. And if there has been a history of success, people will start to assume, okay, maybe this thing can move again. So that's helpful too from the momentum perspective. But this still has a 2x in it. Should this be successful on the cup and handle front? CleanSpark's another one. If I had to choose amongst the 8 or the 6 or the 10 miners, this would certainly be on the list. Above the cloud, bullish TK cross, starting to get to highs again from 2024. Has a decent measured move higher. I don't hate this at all. I think when we get into like the Bitfarms or the IREN or the Cypher, these have all had great moves. And from a technical perspective, I just don't see great entries here on a multi-week basis. Unlike a day trader can pick these out and say, okay, I'm here for a 9% move, 10% move. Bitfarms was up, 25% today. IREN was up 10% today. Unless you have a massive fundamental thesis that the market just isn't aware about, I would be careful with these. Bitfarms does have a bear div on this. I don't have the RSI there. No trailing stop losses have been hit here at all. The first fractal's at like 250. Cypher, same deal. There's not really going to be any trailing stop losses here on low time frames until like 10. So you're already 2x from the trailing stop loss. So you have to go even lower for a trailing stop loss, and then it gets noisy. So, it's kind of just at your own discretion. Where did you get in? What did you want? How long are you holding this? It's certainly reaching the TA targets. It's still a decent move left, potentially. It's just a matter of how patient you want to be. And of course, IREN. IREN's probably the best example of a chart I barely traded and just should have bought and looked away. It's one of those things where if you were like me and said, oh, this is a Bitcoin miner, Bitcoin miners are horrible, this thing's never going to go anywhere. And said that instead of listening to the TA. TA was never wrong here. It was dead on the money. But up here, it just looks a little overbought. I could be wrong. It could go to 250, right? What do I know? But a fresh entry doesn't make a whole lot of sense up here. And as far as Coin and Galaxy, Coin is yet to break out. If you're bullish alts, I'd expect Coin to do better. I'd expect Coin to outperform MSTR, honestly. That's going to take some time to be potentially proven correct. You could get chewed up a lot trading that in the near term, but this is yet to really do anything since the S&P listing. This was the S&P listing, and then it sort of took off, and now it's reconsolidated up here. But it's in a better spot than MSTR currently, and then Galaxy's also kind of well on its way to hitting the measured move targets. So as far as an idea today on the crypto side, it's either you're just buying spot positions and hoping for the best, or maybe you like CORZ. Maybe you're buying other stuff that's down a lot. I don't really have any bright ideas on the crypto side. Government's still closed, so we're not getting any data this week unless the government reopens. But never fear, we have plenty of Fed speak, just endless amounts of Fed speak. Do these people do anything else? I don't even know. But other than that, no data. No data to hedge, no data to worry about. We'd normally be getting retail sales. That would be important. PPI, maybe semi-important. Generally nothing this week. Super, super important. Friday, we would be getting CPI. So, we might be opened back up for CPI, or they'll just release it, even though the government's closed. On the meeting probabilities, we're dialing in a guaranteed cut here on the 29th. I'm pretty sure the Fed still meets if the government's closed. I'm pretty sure this isn't off the calendar if the government's closed. If Jay may say we're data dependent, but if there's no data, it's hard to know where we're going to be for December. There's a pretty high likelihood that we'll get a cut based on available data. But if the available data changes dramatically because we haven't been getting data, then, this 92% could be plus or minus 100% one direction or the other. Who knows? But I would expect a cut next meeting. Truflation has been ticking up here slowly. You know, it's been noisy as heck, but the average, if you were to put a 30-day moving average on this, certainly slowly creeping up. And if truflation is rising, that likely means that we are seeing that on estimates as well, which we are. I assume this is up to date here, even though the government's closed, just because it changed from last video. This had been declining CPI, but now it's rising. Core still down month over month. PCE down, core PCE down. So I don't know. You know, I don't know what to trust on the government side, because if they're not collecting the data, or they're getting worse quality data because they're just not there, it's hard to know. You know, it's certainly worse than it was before, just on the quality piece. So we'll see what comes out and what they say. Now we know GDP, as they mentioned here, due to the government shutdown, today's GDP is based only on blah, blah, blah. So this is like partial data. Still looks good, looks okay, looks fine. But, you know, don't be surprised if plus or minus 1% when the actual data comes out and everything snaps back to reality. Nothing to really say at the moment, but it looks good. It looks good for the moment. Our reverse repo on the liquidity side down to its lowest level since 2021, when it was effectively zero. It's at 4.12 here, and we're also running out of room on the liquidity front. Should there be an issue with liquidity, it's not going to come out of the reverse repo. It's going to have to come out of some other mechanism. Dollar itself is still strong, so maybe we just keep the government closed and the dollar can continue to do well. In a vacuum, if you were to look at this chart, not knowing what it was, you would probably be very excited with the potential of where this could go from a bearish to bullish reversal. If this continues to creep higher, or even just hold sideways, this should break out. And we certainly don't want that on the crypto side. Rising dollar or dollar strength hurts global liquidity, and it certainly hurts gold prices, typically, crypto prices, certainly. So it's tough because BTC looks like it's trying to recover, but if DXY breaks out in a big, big way, I don't know necessarily why it would, but if it does, I'd imagine that would put a ceiling on our recovery here on the crypto side. Bond complexes across the board, IEF, AG, SHI, on technicals look great. These are slow moving. You know, these are ocean liners. They're not going to randomly shoot up most of the time, but they are positioned for bullish continuation after a multi-year bottom. Even TLT starting to look decent relative to where it's been. So I think if you had to choose risk on or risk off, we don't want these magically shooting higher. Now, it's possible that we could live in harmony and these ETFs, the bond complex, could recover slowly while risk still continues on its merry way. But any sudden movements here in yields, for whatever reason, I can't imagine would be taken super bullish on the risk side of the equation. Here's gold hitting a new all-time high again today. You know, again, Lord, I've seen what you've done for gold and I want it for me. This has gone from hitting TA targets to hitting well beyond TA targets to now it is in full-blown parabolic mode. And if Bitcoin catches a whiff of this in Q4, I don't see how we're not at 250K. It's just, you know, how do you want to trade that today? Do you want to take that chance on leverage or spot, or do you just wait? That's up to you. And you, of course, have the legacy bros dancing on our grave saying, you know, we weren't store value on Friday or whatever. Fine. You know, we'll see who gets the last laugh at the end of the year. But it's very possible that the way gold is moving, we could see just a very, very, very quick move on BTC. It's just, let's get back to 120 first and we can talk. But gold needs to settle down a little bit for BTC to do well, I think. Looking at the gold ETF flows on the 30-day rate of change, this has reached a decent level relative to what we've seen on this stuff peaking out. You know, you typically see price start to move up, maybe some of it with ETF flows, but you tend to get the biggest flows towards the very end. You know, if we look at what happened 2020 into 21, 2022, even 2016 to some degree. Now, we're not quite there on flows, but we're getting there where, you know, retail is just late. People panic buy the top, just the way it is. But people have definitely woken up after seeing headlines about gold, all-time highs over and over again. What's probably the most concerning is potential gold BTC ratio chart, BTC over gold. Talked about this a couple weeks back, but we definitely don't want this breaking down. on a relative basis. This favors gold's strength, and it probably favors cycle over for BTC. So it's definitely something to continue to watch. And as many people have, if you look at BTC against gold and then MSTR, these have correlated pretty well. So this is to say, don't expect MSTR to turn around until this BTC gold ratio turns around, which maybe makes sense. You've got people throwing money at metals instead of speculating on leveraged BTC. That's one way to read this. But again, it's not both moving together necessarily. It's you're getting weakness on BTC relative to gold. You're getting weakness on MSTR. Looking at silver, same deal, just parabolic. I mean, what do you do here? I don't like fresh positions up here. Doesn't make sense to me. And I can't imagine this goes on for any lengthy period of time. Price-wise, it could go quite high. But duration, you see something that goes straight up. Eventually, it comes to a level, like it did in 2020 here. It hit a level and then just sort of consolidated for 3 years. So we'll see where it goes. It's past any TA targets at this point, and it's moving on its own. You've also got rare earths that are roofing today post China-Trump strife, I guess you could call it. And collectively, it's hard to really say like, yeah, this looks like a great entry on right? I know guys have been holding this stuff for 16 years, finally in profit. Good for them. But when you look at the weekly, RSI's at infinity. Now this can keep going, fine. You get another bear div on this, fine. You're getting today at least, a spinning top. That is a buyers and sellers coming to an equilibrium candle. That could change in the next 4 days, absolutely. But fresh entry, not for me. REMX, again, fresh entry, no. We talked about this for many weeks. Rare Earth ETF has looked great, done very, very well. So there are ways to get exposure. It's just, are they great trades? I'm not so sure. UAMY, another one, it just feels a little late. That's all. It's just hard for the TA to pick this up at this point, at this juncture. You kind of have to be paying attention to this stuff as it's going on as a theme, and then find names within the theme. MP was one that had this inverted head and shoulders on it, and it's already reached its target. Wasn't a massive move, but plus 22% a day. Sure. So I don't really know what you do with the rare earth stuff right now. And then you've got Oklo continuing to do very well in its TA target zone. You've got Big Bear AI. Maybe that's one that's starting to break out. You've got Tempest TEM. That one's starting to break up. You just have to be very, very aware of the options and possibilities here. And for me, from a technical side, just avoid anything that already has had a parabolic move. It just makes no sense to me. Something like this looks great as it's starting to break out. And if we look at a few of these AI charts, quantum charts rather, QUBT hasn't broken out yet. Rigetti's still going. IONQ still going. Qubits D-Wave still going. It's just hard to know. I think everybody's under the assumption that these are going to just rug you at any moment, which is fair. So it's hard to know how far the leaders would go. Are the laggers going to catch up? Generally confusing time if you're not already in these themes and names and have been watching them, I think, for a couple months. Risks of drawdown certainly feel fairly high at this juncture. These are the altcoins right now, right? That's where you're seeing the mania, and you're not seeing that on the alt side. That's all for this one. Let me know what I missed. Give me a like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.